Welcome and thank you for joining us. My guests today are Jason Barke, Deputy Associate Director of Strategic Workforce Planning at the Office of Personnel Management, John Gill, Executive Director of Human Capital Data Management and Modernization at OPM, and Jason Gray, Chief Information Officer at USAID. Jason, and John, thank you so much for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So today in our conversation, we're going to be focusing on how agencies can transform or build on the employee experience through the use of technology and through process improvements. And just to kind of set the scene for everyone here, we've seen a lot of workforce changes that have been happening at federal agencies in just the last couple of years. That's been coming from a combination of adjusting to a hybrid work setting, figuring out the right balance between in-person work and telework for employees, while at the same time, just the rapid development of new technologies and trying to incorporate those into hybrid work settings. So, with all of those different details in mind, I think one big question for a lot of people is, where does that leave federal employees in the middle of all of this? So Jason Barke, maybe if I can start with you, and we can talk a little bit at a high level first. Can we discuss what is the actual meaning of employee experience, and why is that something that's important for agencies to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think employee experience right now is really kind of on top of mind for everyone, especially with everything that you kind of mentioned, Drew. We moved into like a hybrid work environment. We've come out of a pandemic. We have new work environments that we're working on. And so really when we think of employee experience, it's really that life cycle. It's really that person's kind of their relationship with their work in the organization. And it starts right from the beginning, right when they are applying for a job. What is that experience when they're applying for? Is it difficult to apply? Are the systems working? Everything that kind of goes through that. Do they have good communication through it? Because they are going to be your future employees, and they will be the ones that will be kind of thinking about right from that work, right from the start, how this all works. And so what's the onboarding process like? What's it like when they get into the office? Is their computer ready? Do they have meaningful work right away? Are they engaged? So all these types of things really, I think, are important when we think about employee experience and really their kind of accumulation to the workplace and the workforce within your organization. And we want to set them up for success right away. And by having all those things in place really leads to a really more engaged, more productive employee and employee experience moving forward.
And John, I wanted to turn it to you as well. Do you see there being any changes recently in the way that agencies are thinking about employee experience and what that involves, just with the way the workplace has changed in the last couple of years?
Well, I think the big opportunity that we have is really in the space of technology. When you look back on last year, there was a memo that came out that talked about what is organization health and what are the characteristics of good organization health, and within that it talked about not only issues associated with performance management strategies, but it talked specifically about design of workspaces and workplaces, and the supportive and assistive technology tools for individuals to do collaborative work. And equally so, it also talked about the importance of creating an environment that is diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible. And those principles that came out as part of the org health strategy is the same set of things that we're looking at in running the HR part of organizations. And it really centers on the individual. And so I see major changes in that regard. I see agencies beginning to use and bring in the assistive tools that were mentioned last year very purposefully, so that there are ways that they are being used not only from a personal efficiency standpoint, but to do collaborative work as well. I think this is really quite important, particularly as we look at the new world of work and the hybrid environment that we're going to be in as a normal order of course going forward. The ability to use these kinds of tools in a way that not only does the individual work, but equally so creates as best as possible the social interaction that is necessary and very difficult to do when you're in a remote condition. So I think these are very, very important for organizations moving forward.
Thank you. And Jason Gray, I want to bring you into the conversation here as well. What are some of, in your experience, I know you're the CIO for USAID, but you also hold a leadership role on the CIO Council. So can you talk about maybe in some of the conversations that you've had with your peers, what are some of those new technologies or tools that agencies or managers are really thinking about incorporating right now, and what can really be useful to the employee experience there?
Yeah, well, much like Jason Barke said, the employee experience is really about the whole life cycle of the employee, whether it's the onboarding process, the recruitment process, career development, the workplace and the culture of the organization, even from an offboarding standpoint, like the whole life cycle. So to me, when I'm thinking about technology associated with that, we know that technology is an enabler. It's an empowerer. It is hopefully a force multiplier that allows all of the agency to interact with the employee, because it's all in support of the employee. So when I think about the different types of technologies, the pandemic taught us a lot. I mean, it really showed how well prepared the government was to transition to a fully remote environment. Because really overnight, so many things transition very quickly. And again, I feel like the collective workforce worked a lot on that from a technology standpoint that I think positioned us to be in a good place. But some of the, when you look at the hybrid environment that we're in, was a different challenge, right? I mean, it was pre-pandemic, it was really focused on going to meetings and transitioning from one room to the next. During the pandemic, it was 100% virtual for most individuals. So the technology, whether it's the video technology or the VPN, the virtual private networking technology required for people to basically connect anywhere around the world or from their home, it was a lot of that was there. But now the hybrid environment is really how do you create equity across the workforce when you have those short conversations that can really either shorten or remove the entire need for meetings. So I don't think it's just a technology solution. I also think it's how we shape our meetings and how we engage with the staff and the employees, whether it's the onboarding, the offboarding, or even from a culture standpoint. But there's a lot. I know there's making sure that we have consistent types of technology across the work space and environment. And working at USAID, we are around over 100 countries. So it's a massive challenge when you look at making sure that you have the same technology or similar technologies so that people can transition from one place to the other and have that fair and equitable experience, whether they're at home, whether they're thousands of miles away, or whether they're in the office having those conversations. So there's a lot of planning that goes to it. I will say, just from a workforce committee standpoint, we spend a lot of time, and even from a CIO council standpoint, talking about the different types of technologies that we have across the federal landscape to make sure that we're not in silos, we're learning from each other, sharing best practices, which has made the journey so much easier than if we were all alone trying to figure it out on our own.
And Jason Gray, just a quick follow-up to that. In your time that you've kind of been overseeing or working on how to, I guess, think about some of those questions, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned or mistakes maybe that you've learned from or grown from in shaping how technology and communication kind of interact with each other?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I've been in this agency for 2 years now, and I will say the international space was when you're looking at time zones and making sure that you're accommodating so that we aren't just having everything that is in DC time. That was a big factor. The availability of connectivity. Some of the locations that we operate in are very limited, and making sure that we are looking at low Earth orbit options for satellite telecommunications to make sure that we're providing the types of connectivity that is needed. Some of the areas that we operate in are extremely challenging, and it's sometimes we have to evacuate people, and making sure from an operational readiness that we have technology that's there that can provide services when they're evacuating from somewhere, when there's some crises. We have an entire humanitarian assistance bureau that responds to international crises, whether people-made or natural disasters, and just making sure that we're engaging with. But to your question about lessons learned, I think one of the things that I've seen at every agency I've been at is drawing on the intellectual capital of everyone around the agency, because headquarters doesn't always know best, especially when it's thousands of miles away and the challenges that are there. So it's making sure that we're actively engaged and listening and getting feedback from staff across the entire agency to incorporate that feedback into best practices and lessons learned so that we can replicate across the agency.
Just kind of piggyback on what Jason was talking about. It's kind of a simple thing. And he talked about how do you make how do you make a social interaction happen in that regard? And I think probably the thing that I've found as the most critical to success factor in this whole area of organization health is don't lose sight of the one-on-ones. And the one-on-ones should not be thematic. The one-on-ones should be, how are you feeling? And allow that to happen. We're in a very different environment right now, and the importance of people having a sense that someone's listening to them from an empathetic standpoint and really cares about them. And it doesn't have to be any more than that. And doing that as a regular order of course, as a project leader, a supervisor, a manager, and sometimes just a teammate is a really important thing to take the time to do. I think we've gotten a little bit better but not completely on the cadence of meetings, although we could work on that quite a bit, not only the meeting itself, but the timing associated with it. The world of work today is sometimes sitting in a study in a house, and you've got to attend to that. And at the same time, you have to make sure that the work is getting done. And so give a little bit of space, give 5 minutes, change the cadence of the meetings during the day or during a week, so that there is a little bit of space there for a breadth of individuals. So I think that's really quite important, making it a little bit more personalized. And this comes out in all of the studies as well, which we can talk about later.
Yeah, I would just agree with what John and Jason both said. I mean, some really good points on both those. I mean, earlier John and Jason, I think, both talked about equity, and for us that's super important, right? We need to make sure that our remote employees have the same access that people in the building, because we can't have where somebody can't get access to technology or can't use it because they're remote, they can't do their job, they're struggling, when people in the building have better access, they're able to get it. Now maybe they start getting different assignments because they can have access. So it's really important. That's something we've really stressed, at least at OPM and with my team, that everybody has access, everybody's involved. We make sure that we have technology that we can all participate. If we're doing a brainstorming, we'll go use Miro or something like that, where we can whiteboard through remotely on our computer, so we can all do our stickies and we can all make sure that we're participating and everybody's voice is heard. So to us, that's really the change and the kind of lesson that we learned was, and we're still figuring that out. How do we make sure that everybody's involved in a meeting? It's just not the people in the room, it's the people online, and that we continue to build on that and kind of build that engagement with everybody. So I think for my team, that's something that we've really learned and tried to continue to build on as we go forward.
Right. I would imagine that, that's just kind of a continuing challenge to think about how to communicate and how to kind of streamline that process. But one kind of theme or through line that I'm hearing is just being able to listen to employees and incorporate or hear feedback from employees who are actually doing the work every day. So does any of you have maybe an example of something you've heard in terms of feedback from employees and how you have kind of incorporated that into your workflows in the office?
I feel like those organic conversations are going to be really key because typically, you know, you have your agenda, you've got all the things that you need to do, and you go through your checklist, and then unfortunately schedules are so busy, it's moving from one meeting to the next, and through technology, we can click off at the 10:59 and at 11 o'clock start somewhere else. And we miss that social interaction and those organic conversations that normally happen in a hallway or an elevator or just in passing. And feedback has been really leaving time or actually starting. And again, John mentioned this, starting with that basic question of, how are you doing? Or how was your weekend? Or how are things going? That is not about work. It's not about an agenda item. It's not about updates or more of the, what are you doing for me or for this agency? It's really, tell me about, you know, is there any show that you're watching or something that is just organic that then creates that connective tissue that we have when we're seeing people in person. And so I feel like from a best practice standpoint, that has been really, really helpful. And again, I know both Jason and John talked about the importance of that.
And John or Jason, do you have anything to add about just, you know, examples of feedback or changing processes based on what you hear from employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just to build off what Jason said and what John said, you know, earlier, I mean, that communication, that kind of, you know, engagement with our staff is like so important. And, you know, and so it's just not all about work. You know, when Jason said that, it just kind of reminded me of some stuff that we're doing at OPM. We're actually having these speaker series where we're inviting employees to come and not talk about work, but talk about things that they do. We've had somebody talk about they play a guitar, somebody's a mountain climber, somebody's a life coach, and we've had really good response to it. Hundreds of people have come to these sessions to just hear and be engaged and talk to those people. So I think, you know, from our listening sessions, that's something that we've learned, that we, you know, heard, you know, so when we bring people in and either at all hands and we kind of, you know, what's on your mind, that's the feedback that we get. And then, you know, on a more kind of tangential kind of, you know, area, of course, you know, we administer the FEVs, the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. And so, you know, to us, that's a huge mechanism also to gather data. And we hope that, you know, agencies are using that to really hear the voice of their employees. And we really encourage employees to, you know, to take the FEVs because it is an opportunity to share your thoughts and provide some feedback. And I know a lot of agencies are doing some really good work with the data that they receive and really building some good action plans and engagement plans to really, you know, get, it's just not all about driving our scores up. It's all about taking the data and using the data and engaging your employees to make the workforce better, to work the workplace better. And so we learn a lot from that type of survey to help us build those kind of strategies.
Yeah, I just doubling down on that, you know, one of the obvious important points in the employee experience world is the more that employees are part of the initiatives that come out of the work, that are part of the work that's going on, the better we're going to be at being a better community. And Jason talked about some of the work we're doing with the not only taking information from the FEV survey, but then we've kind of set a program of work in place, or an initiative in place inside of OPM that really emanated from a fairly far-reaching qualitative look at a number of different things, not only the quants from the viewpoint survey, the sentiments associated with that, but other pieces as well, such as our strategic plan and the DEIA strategic plan and the president's management agenda, and did a listening tour. And coming out of that was a whole set of insights that really helped us think about a good way, perhaps, of bringing the employees into the game completely. And we call it, at this point, we call it the Our People Matter agenda. Most important and tied to data, we're running almost, I think they're now running bi-weekly what are called innovation jams. And they're all done tech enabled. And so it's using people where they are. It's having people join these things, and they're kind of fun events, but they're also providing an avenue for individuals to, first of all, express themselves, secondly, collaborate, and thirdly, it is driven off the mission. So there is this tie then to the social interaction that's happening, the use of technology, whether it be a mural board or other constructs that are kind of driven through, you know, classic design thinking. and actually provide a personal value to the individual who's participating in it, and something that's important for us as a mission delivery organization. And it's been going on now for about 6 months, and will continue because it's making good progress.
No, sounds like a really interesting initiative. Is there, I guess, any takeaways so far? I know it's early on if it's been just 6 months, but what have you kind of heard or learned in that process so far?
Well, we've learned, and I'm going to say it's not surprising, but it's validating. And what's validating is we want to be in the middle of it. We want to be, and this goes back, many years for those of us who have been at this a little bit longer. It's people want to know that they matter. People want to not only just say that, but equally so, I matter and I have something to contribute, and have me be heard as an individual and collective, and create the safe space for me to do that. And in doing that, you're taking advantage of the power of the individual and the collective, and you're able to do it with the technology that we have, with not having everybody sit in the same room to make it happen. And so that's the kind of input and insights that we've gotten from the community, and we're using that as the basis for forming different approaches to things, including one I kind of tongue-in-cheek said before, how do you run effective meetings? So that kind of thing, and we have a protocol for that right now that emanated from some of this work. So again, it's the eye on the individual to begin with, the way that I think about it, looking at that from a total employee experience perspective, as Jason laid it out, and both Jasons talked about to begin with. So from my perspective, it is the right place for us to be.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think also on the other side of the coin there, while you as kind of managers or agency leaders are collecting this information or trying to hear back from employees, are there just, I guess, on the other side of that, are there opportunities or trainings or ways that employees themselves who are kind of in these meetings or doing this work day to day, or what resources or what training do you think they would need to best take advantage of the technology or the ways that, I guess, the workplace is operating now?
Well, there's probably two levels, two dimensions, if you will, many dimensions, and I'd let Jason talk about what I would call the technical products. And there are many, and they're really important to use. The other thing is not necessarily a technical product, but what we're using as one of our foundations is this notion of design thinking. So human-centered design has been in play now for the last 10 to 15 years. It's become a way that we think about doing our work, and it's the first thing that we look at. So it is from the human-centered out, or human-centered in, whichever way you want to describe it. And in the case of the different initiatives that are popping out of this work that I was talking about, these jams, if you will, the EX jams, where there is a germ of an idea or something that wants to be pursued, there are vehicles then for those individuals to take advantage of. We have a what's called the lab here at OPM. And within that, there are design thinking approaches that you can take, and we provide that capability and provide that guidance to individuals when they're doing this, and it's a force multiplier. So those that were in the first sessions a year and a half or 2 years ago, as we were building our innovation practices, are now the mentors, if you will, for the next generation. And so this is the way that we're using that. From a technology standpoint, I'd lay it over to Jason to talk about some of the things that are actually really important to look at, particularly in the world of artificial intelligence, for instance. And I'd pass that over to them to talk about, and then I'm happy to opine on it later as well.
Yeah, so thank you, John. I will say, just to stay on non-technical matters, learning from our organization has been really, really critical. I know when I first got here, we hosted a system manager workshop where we pulled in 50 different system managers from around the world to learn from them on, what are you doing to make employees' lives easier? And it was amazing. So it wasn't just, hey, we're from Washington and we're here to help. It's we want to learn and engaging. And so there's that piece. In terms of AI, the same approach, meaning that we are learning and looking for and encouraging teams within the agency to develop and come up with real solutions to problems that then we can scale. As an example, correspondence tracking and management. We have had a couple of our missions that have developed some really amazing capabilities with tools that we already have that we weren't using that way. And we're like, oh my goodness, this is great. And let's start replicating that across the agency to make the employee experience better. Just as an example, another example we had in Thailand, they were explaining the challenges as it related to some processes that we had as it related to accessing our Wi-Fi network from a technology standpoint. And someone said, hey, it would be so much easier if you did this. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. Let's do that. And then let's replicate that across the entire world so that we are making it easy for everyone. Another thing that I'll say, given our close relationship with the State Department, is focusing on interoperability and collaboration across, in many instances, co-located areas, and looking at ways that we can improve and ease and reduce the burdens on staff. One of the areas was, like, from a technology standpoint, was Wi-Fi. State Department has Wi-Fi. We have Wi-Fi. We've, an MOU that now allows us at USAID to leverage state's Wi-Fi and not have to spend money to duplicate or replicate what's already there. Most recently, we also did a cybersecurity training reciprocity, so that, if we have staff that are, accessing our network and they go through our cybersecurity and privacy awareness training, specifically cybersecurity for right now, that they go to State Department, it's like, hey, our certificate's just as good, and likewise when they're coming to access our network. So again, looking for process improvements that involve technology, but aren't really technology, that ease and make the employee experience better.
Yeah, and I would just add, I guess, from a government-wide perspective, and then from an OPM perspective, some things, from the government-wide, we think about how we can help people, get the training they need, get the skills they need. And so, we put on, the hybrid training that, we had over 30,000 people attend. Right now, we have some AI training going on. It's called our Gov to Gov series. We're going to be developing kind of series around that. It's all free to federal employees. It's out on our website. You can go sign up. You can take it. We try to have ongoing webinars to kind of talk about the things that we're doing. When new kind of, initiatives come out, we kind of make sure that people have the tools that they need. And then really from, an OPM standpoint, and even from, a workforce policy innovation standpoint, we really, encourage people to get the training that they need. We really talk about IDPs and really making sure that aligns to their work and what they're going to do. We've kind of, begun trying to kind of share our training, right? We do kind of a train the trainer type thing where, if somebody goes to training, they come back and they talk about what they learned. We lean on other offices within OPM. The CIO's office has done a lot for us and come and done trainings on, how to use Microsoft. We're a Teams organization, right? All the different power apps that you can use in Microsoft to help people understand that technology and leverage it. And then, we also try to share our training. If somebody goes to training, we've kind of created a database of all the trainings. As people go, they kind of rate them or put them in there and say, hey, if you're looking for a good visualization training, here's one that I took. And so we continue to kind of share that and build on that and make sure that the people are developing those skills that they need to not only support them, but support the organization.
Yeah, no, thank you all of you for those great answers. Jason, Barke, just wanted to follow up with you on one point. Can you talk a little bit more about the AI trainings that you all are offering? What does that actually entail, and what are some of the big questions that are coming up in those?
Yeah, so I'm not the leader, the expert on the AI training, but we've really built it around, kind of what is AI, and really it's kind of a basics on AI, and from the generative AI to regular AI to how those interact, how we use them, things to think about, as government employees, what we can and can't do, how you can help it to, augment and inform your work. It's really being done by our HRS team that did the hybrid work environment training. And so they've been getting very favorable reviews on it. They've kept it kind of actually to small sessions. So they've had more sessions because they really want it to be interactive and engaged. And so I think the first few sold out very quickly. There's probably still some spots open, but they're going to continue to do that and build it on with some in-person ones. I think they're looking at some possible in-person ones, but really more virtual so that everybody can attend. But like I said, it's really on the basics of AI. What is AI? How are we using it? How can we use it? Maybe some do's and don'ts with AI.
Yeah, I mean, Jason said it right. I think really understanding the nomenclature associated with AI, generative AI is one component of the AI universe. Jason Gray would know this very, very well, and really getting clear around those things. So what are the kind of tools and products you can use for efficiency gains on transactional work? But then there is the generative AI, and when you look at the world that we're now playing, and quite frankly, it is, in my view, and I'm not just saying this, everyone says it is the game changer in terms of the way we think about work, the way that we think about life experiences, and really getting in tune with that. And I would just echo Jason Barke's point about training. This is the kind of technology or the kind of breakthrough that is like a Formula One car, and you wouldn't get your driver's license and drive a Formula One car. And so the point of really getting grounded on what it is, what it isn't, what the possibilities are, what the risks are associated with it. And when you're bringing it into your agency, and we all need to be doing it in a thoughtful sort of way, you've really got to understand the opportunity and the boundary conditions associated with it. So what we're doing, and we talked, Jason mentioned Microsoft, and Jason Gray may have Microsoft as a basis there, whether it's Microsoft or any of the other major platforms. We are as a precursor to getting any licensing in the generative AI space associated with the products that Microsoft has. People have to go through training, and they have to be certified, quote certified, and that is, and we're doing that in collaboration with our outside vendor. And I think that many agencies are doing that. Critically important to make sure that somebody, when they get behind the wheel, they're able to drive that thing and understand the difference. The other thing with this, and I think it's ahead of us, again, if you go back in time, one of the important components of the way that we think about the work that we do is the ability to think critically. And in the case of with generative AI, it becomes an enabler, and it really is quite powerful. And so, where those of us who have either talked about this from an organization standpoint, or spoken at schools or taught in schools, understand the power and importance of critical thinking. Generative AI is an enabler for doing that. And there's some fundamental skills that you can pick up. And Jason Gray can talk about prompt engineering, like how do you ask the questions, framing the right questions so that you are building and training the model to do what you want it to do and only what you want it to do. And so there's I think a skill base there that's really quite important. That's not just for the data scientists. It is for any of us who are in the workplace, who are trying to solve problems and trying to get to come to grasp with difficult challenges in our work areas. And that runs through the whole organization.
And Jason Gray, I want to bring you in on the conversation with AI as well. I think that just kind of speaks for itself. But where have you seen AI kind of playing into the employee experience, and where do you see kind of maybe some of the opportunities or challenges for using it in the workspace?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question. So a couple of things. One, much like Jason and John have explained, we are also focusing on making sure that the workforce is trained. We have like a 101 training, a 102 training. We have basic foundational trainings that are available through our learning management, USAID University, as we call it. So there's that. We also do sessions. Just yesterday did a session for about an hour, specifically talking on prompts to give like real examples, because what we're finding is not everyone knows really the power, the impact specifically with generative AI that can make their lives easier. There's a little bit of mysticism, if you will, and we're trying to demystify it and say, look, a couple of things. One, we're explaining that AI helps to inform, but it does not decide. That is a human, function, is that an individual needs to decide. Of course, focusing on responsible AI and talking about the limits and the rules. So at the agency, I primarily, as not only the CIO, but the acting chief AI officer, am focused on looking at two real lanes. We have operational IT, where we're focused on all things operational, whether it's how our systems operate, things related to our data. And those are things that we've reinforced for the team, the entire agency, that AI is wonderful, but you can't use it for agency data until it's authorized. As the authorizing official, we have to go through the authorization process, and we're working with multiple vendors right now to go through that process. We are actually a Google platform, so we do not, we have Microsoft for Office automation, but for the actual platform that we use Google. So we're working with across the spectrum, whether it's Gemini or Copilot or there's so many other vendors out there that we're working with. So training is key. But the first is the operational. It's very easy. It's like you cannot use agency data until it's authorized. Everyone knows that, again, to reinforce the training, because we don't want accidents to happen. The second piece is the programmatic and policy side. There's a lot of work that the agency does that is beyond the scope of the CIO, meaning we are investing in implementing partners that are doing amazing work to solve some of the greatest challenges in some of the places that we operate. And what I don't want to do is constrict all of the work that they're doing as if, hey, this is all of these constraints are here. So we're working very, very closely with, on the program side, on the policy side, and the operational side, to make sure that we're looking holistically. And we're training that way, so that I don't want people to be afraid, but I want them to be mindful. I want them to think about being responsible, which again, that comes with everything we do. Even if it's just a Google search or some other search engine that someone is using, we need to make sure what we're putting in there and out there. And then the governance, building governance and making sure we have strong governance on how we're managing. We have an AI, internal agency AI council that walks through, this is how we're governing, this is what we do, these are our use cases. But training is key, making sure, again, that we reinforce that AI helps to inform, but people are the ones who decide on how and what we use AI for.
And just a quick follow-up for you, Jason. You mentioned earlier that you work, with the State Department in a lot of different ways. But are there other examples, through maybe your collaboration on the CIO Council, where you've seen different agencies' use of approaching AI, and anywhere that you're looking for maybe lessons learned or to build on where some agencies are doing things well?
Yeah, so I would say the Chief AI Officer Council for the government is really focused a lot on that. And I'll give you a really good example is in order to use a different technology, we need terms of service for government. And what initially started was all agencies going and trying to figure out, hey, I need to have an acceptable terms of service, and we need to do this one-on-one. And of course, right away, the council's like, wait a minute, we should have a government-wide terms of service so that we don't have to have every agency go and doing it ourselves. And that has been really helpful. I also think the use case repository that we have is really helpful. The leveraging the communities across government, whether it's the Chico Council or the CFO Council or the CIO Council, it's learning from each other. And I will say, in the whole time I've been working for government, that is something that we have come a really long way. There's a lot of collaboration. So it's really easy if we're trying to figure something out. And I know the authorization process, as I referenced earlier, to operationalize something, we're looking at through the CIO Council on ways to share and collaborate with artifacts and documentation so it doesn't take a long time to authorize systems. And once we have a system authorized, again, through FedRAMP, other agencies can leverage the same solution and not have to go and redo all of the work. There's a little bit of work that has to be done because when you're dealing with agency data, it's really important that you do your housekeeping and the work that needs to get done. But those are a couple examples on the ways that we're collaborating because we want to do once and use many, right? We want to make sure that we're leveraging each other. And I will say the community across government, regardless of whether it's IT, is done a really, really good job at collaborating and learning from each other.
Great, thank you for that. Well, unfortunately, we are running a little bit short on time here, so I just want to kind of wrap up and get an answer from each of you. You know, we covered a lot of ground. There have been a lot of changes for the federal workforce in terms of employee experience, like we said, in terms of process changes, just in the last couple of years. But looking forward to the future, what are some of the ways that you are looking at continuing to improve the way that employees have their experiences at work and continue their operations?
I'm happy to jump in quick. I mean, it's a really good question. It's one that, you know, we contemplate, and I think it's that continuous improvement process to continue to reevaluate, to continue to look at how you're doing, to get employee feedback, whether it's, you know, annually through the FES, whether it's through pulse surveys, whether it's through listening sessions, whether it's through word of mouth, because those are the things that, you know, that are important to employees. And those are the ones that as a manager, as an executive, that we really need to pay attention to, because that's how we're going to continue to grow our organization, how we're going to continue to be productive, continue to be engaged, and really, you know, help our employees have that great experience so that our customers can have that great experience, because they can't serve our customers if they're not having that great experience, if they don't have all the tools that they need, if they're not engaged. So to me, that's what I would continue to focus on. It's just that that continuous improvement loop, to have those listening sessions, to be responsive, and to kind of, you know, take this serious and really think about a strategy and a plan where you're able to really allow employees to have that best experience.
I guess it was two and a half years ago right now, the Surgeon General conducted a very deep research across the US on matters associated with the workplace coming out of the pandemic. And they published a document that was called the New Framework for Health and Well-Being in the Workplace. And when you go back and you look at that, and you look at, he had 5 essentials that he talked about, you know, and protection from harm, connection and community, work-life harmony, and mattering at work, and opportunities for growth. And when you look at the details in there, they begin to speak to what we're trying to do and what we're trying to convey here as well. So, you know, the whole notion of connection and community, you know, talking about collaboration and teamwork in the workplace, work-life harmony, you know, provide more autonomy on how work is done. And you can go right down the list, and this connection to a very important part of who we are, our own mental health and our capability to be all that we can be, is clearly clinically shown as being critically important, not only for ourselves, but equally so for the missions that we're trying to attend to and service through our agencies. And so my view is that you look at that kind of substantive information, and you look at what we're doing in the employee experience space, and then also consider the technology that we have to enable those things to happen in the new hybrid work environment. All of these things begin to play together, and I think we keep our eye on those balls. I think we continue to learn from them. Jason used the term continuous improvement, and it is continuous improvement and an observation of how we're doing as individuals and communities. And the data now is there and available for us to use, much more so than it ever has been before. So our ability to build insights off of what's happening to the individuals and the workplace is so much more profound than it ever has been. And our ability to then put those things together and really get meaning out of what the information says and move forward in that is going to be the healthiest thing for the government.
So I'll be quick, because I agree with everything that was just said. The only thing I would say to add to all of that would be to make sure that we're communicating. Yes, we're collaborating, we're learning from individuals, but making sure that we're demonstrating and being transparent and showing so that employees know, look, you came up with this great idea. This is impacting the agency, and here's how your idea is actually shared across government, because it's really tapping into this amazing talent that we have, which is the workforce, the employee, and leveraging their knowledge, skills, abilities, and expertise. As everyone has said, the continuous learning, not just doing something because we've always done it that way, but re-questioning and thinking, are there better ways? Are there faster ways? Or is it easier? But thank you for the question.
No, thank you all for those great responses. I think that's a great spot to end. So thank you all so much for joining me. We have Jason Barke, Deputy Associate Director of Strategic Workforce Planning at the Office of Personnel Management, John Gill, Executive Director of Human Capital Data Management and Modernization at OPM, and Jason Gray, Chief Information Officer for USAID. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks for having us.
And I'm reporter Drew Friedman. You're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on Workplace Reimagined.